Okay, so the mindfulness, the enjoy the moment, living in the moment. So you've probably got a intellectual curiosity, or you've probably got a experiential curiosity of what mindfulness is. I'm going to guide you for a bit of both as we go along. I think one of the challenges is for mindfulness in the day and age we live in is the very Zen-like process. So if you think back to, I don't know, thousands of years ago, it was a different world than it is today. Now, I love mindfulness and I teach it, and I think it's a great skill to have. I think it's got to be adapted to the world we live in these days. Ideal world, we can all sit there at 6 o'clock in the morning and take time out and be mindful. But the world isn't what it was when these Zen-like principles were put into place. What I mean by that is the world being very tribal in the sense back then, we didn't have the Industrial Revolution that impacted the world that we have today. So these days, if you want to be mindful at 10 o'clock in the morning, you tell your boss, it's time to be mindful. If you've got a bill to pay, you can't say to the person who wants the bill paid, I'm going to be mindful now. So we've got to find ways to incorporate throughout the day to be more functional. And that's sort of the goal now, is to introduce some techniques that can be quite useful, and we'll go from there. Our repeated experiences shape our brain. We can actually sculpt and shape our synaptic connections based on repeated practice. When you look at the brains of meditators, the areas of attention, compassion grow stronger. It's called cortical thinking. So what we practice grows stronger. So if you practice being angry, miserable, sad, then you'll probably get more of it and attract more of it into your life. If you practice love, compassion, gratitude, it gets stronger. And I'm going to talk about the brain, how it's not always as practical as that. We've got to consciously find ways to do that experientially, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going out, watching a show, whether it's seeing a friend, or whether it's just sort of sitting down and being reflective and going from there. Logic, emotion. Logic versus emotion, well, what wins? Logic, emotion, we have an arm wrestle. We know what's right for us, logically. People know smoking's bad for them. They smoke. Not suggesting, implying what people should and shouldn't do. It's just they want to give up and they struggle. They eat foods they think they shouldn't be eating, and they do things they think they shouldn't be doing. So emotion will always win the arm wrestle over logic, one would think, on one level. So it can be difficult to bridge that sort of gap between the head and the heart. The heart wants one thing, the head says another, and finding that happy medium is a challenge, because if we could sort of push things to the head, so to speak, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, then we could have one of these, for example, and we could have a book to solve every issue that ever existed in the world. So we've got to find ways to create experiences for people to help them to do change. So, you know, I've mandatory got to mention disclaimer where the seminar is not to treat anybody. It's all treatment plan. It's all about case formulation. So I don't know where anybody is partaking in the seminar in terms of their own journey. So it's purely from an educational point of view. And my suggestion is for people to use these skills based on their professional remit. So if you're a personal trainer, you do extension to what your skill set is. If you're a teacher, your skill set. If you're a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, then you work on your remit. And that for me is really important, where people don't cross the line. I wrote an article years ago in a fitness magazine where it would make a lot of sense for, say, the personal trainer to focus on the personal training goals in adverse to being the resident therapist. So for me, if anyone's ever got any issues, I always would suggest they get the appropriate medical interventions, which is really important to take that into consideration, because each treatment plan is based on a formulation. Yet in saying that, whatever your profession is, I'm sure you'll make a lot of use of some of the stuff they're going to cover, and we'll go from there. States are very powerful. Many years ago, and you've probably heard the story before, or you may have read in one of the books I wrote about how when I first started working in business, one of the areas I really focused on was internal states. Now, I didn't know a lot about business. I came from a background in therapy and sports coaching, and my first opportunity to work in business many years ago, it's about 15 years ago now, And I asked the CEO, what would you like to help me improve? And he goes to me, we wanted to help improve the KPIs. I didn't know what one was. Truth be told, I didn't know what a KPI was, and I said, can you give them to me? And I'll study them overnight. I was too embarrassed to say I didn't know what it was. I went home that evening, and the KPI, I know what it is now, it's a key performance indicator, and I studied them, and I found out a lot of the KPI was what we call in psychology external attribution. They were factors we can't control. So it's a bit like in sport, you've got like a league table. In football, in rugby, in golf, you've got a table. We can't control the table. We can influence it, but we can't control it. We can't control the referee. We can't control the weather. We can't control the other team, but we can influence by going internal. So I said, okay, these are useful. We need it because you can't go into work airy-fairy, wishy-washy. We need to have a measuring tool. So the KPI was useful. But if I give someone a KPI to do and they focus on that, it's going to put them under pressure. And the brain under pressure doesn't work so well. So for me, it was okay, you need the KPI. It's useful to have that because how we define success in business as a general rule is profit. If the business doesn't make a profit, it's not the only way to define success, obviously, but ultimately, if the business is not making profit, it's not going to go too well. So we keep the KPI, but let's put it to one side. And I said to him, what we want to focus on improving, and you won't find this in Google, by the way, because my little invention was what we call the HPI. Okay? And it's a human performance indicator. And that was internal attribution. So what makes a good member of staff? Enthusiastic, okay, motivated, driven, and I had a number of ways to measure a good member of staff. Gratitude, I used the word love for customer. It was a bit airy-fairy hippie-ish, so it kind of got them a little bit concerned. But what I mean by love for customer was, okay, you can buy somewhere else, but you bought from me. You can go to another seminar, you've come to see me, so I'm really grateful for that because it helps me to do what I'm passionate about. So for me, being grateful, and I said on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being high, if you're at 8, the KPI will look after itself and be more process driven. It's more about the process. And I set up a series, and I don't have time to go into detail now, of experiential exercise to elevate these levels. Because where the staff were when I first come in was probably on a minor scale, but we'd worked on them extensively to raise their, to be more empowered in the world of empowerment. So the KPIs eventually looked after themselves, we smashed sales records because the staff were in a more empowered state. So many years ago, to give an example, illustrate an example, there was a football manager who phoned me up. I was working for a team in League 2, and he phoned me up saying, oh, Jim, at midnight, he goes, you wouldn't believe it, another player's got an injury. When we were playing the premiership team, and he goes, I can't believe we've got another player that's got an injury. I said, okay, and I can't believe it. 2 players have got flu, 1's got injury, 2 are suspended, and we've got the biggest game of our lives. I said, okay. And he would rant on and on and on. I'm sure you've come across those people that rant on and on and on. And I said, okay, I didn't offer him any advice. I said, call me back in an hour and think about what you said. And he calls back an hour later and he goes, Jim, would you believe it? We've got the biggest game of our lives and there's no pressure on us. The pressure's all on them. We can go out and enjoy ourselves. We've got a team of young players that are naive to the meaning of the game. They're going to have fun. We've got nothing to lose. And everything to gain. And we're just going to enjoy ourselves. We've got a great game, great occasion. And you can see the 2 different states. So you go into a game like that, you go into a game like that, you know, the victim and, oh, what's always happened to me? I can't believe it. Or you go into a game, come on, let's bring it on. We can do this. We've overcome challenges before, and we can overcome a challenge now. It's a whole different dynamic. So rather than being that sort of victim that, you know, walks around, and we've all been, I've been there too, we can sort of work on that level. and it's internal, because we can't control anybody else other than ourselves, but we can influence people. So I know there's people out there that tell their children not to smoke, but they smoke themselves. They tell their children don't eat that crap food, but they're eating it. They're telling their students be motivated, but they come into the classroom like this. Hello, everybody. You know, so for me, as a coach, a therapist, you go to that powerful state first. So you go to motivation, you go to confidence, you go to focus. If you're a manager, the same. If you're a teacher, you go to where you want the students to go. It's not always easy. And we briefly talked about anxiety prior to the break, and it being a huge issue in the Western world. And a lot of it's the hypothesis of what we focus on in the future that may or may never happen. And a lot of it's down to what has happened in the past that we've got no control of. And we can bring the problems of the future, hypothetically, to the now, and the past to the now, and deal with them accordingly. We can control what we can, let go what we can't. Give me the strength to control what I can and let go of what I can't. But the reality is that we can get all the information that we want to, yet there's certain brain function. Now, I don't want to sort of hit you with a lot of theory today, but I want to give you enough to understand some basic concepts. So there's a part of the brain called the thalamus, and it gets all the information from the senses. So you'll see the thalamus, and the way we process is through our senses. So we process through our senses: see, hear, and feel. So see, hear, and feel. So that's how we're processing information through our senses. Also taste and smell. And smell, as it happens, is the only sense that's universal, in the sense that we all have a direct pathway from smell to the limbic system. Hence, if you see these fragrance commercials, they've got these raunchy sexual names, and they use biology sexual to advertise them, because we know smell goes straight to the limbic system, and that's the only one that goes bang straight to the limbic, the emotional core of the brain. But more to the point, and back to the agenda here. So you've got the thalamus, and that gets the information from all the senses. See, hear, feel, whatever's going on the outside world. So what is reality? What is reality? Is reality real? What does anything mean? Because you're processing from all our senses, but we've all got a number of experiences to draw from too. So we can sort of hold that thought for now. It's going to get clearer very shortly, because the thalamus sends information to the amygdala. One of the amygdala's function, by the way, it's not the only function, but one of its function is to recognize danger. Okay, it's not the only function. There's a misconception that it is the only function it has. It's not. It's one of its functions is to recognize danger. Part of it is about the size of an almond, and the amygdala, thalamus sends information to the amygdala based on senses. So let's say, for example, there's a dog at the end of the room, a vicious dog, and it's barking, and it's growling, and its teeth are hanging out, and it's looking at you, and so we look at the thalamus is drawing that information, and then it's sending information to the amygdala, and the amygdala is sort of processing that information, and it pre-screens for danger. Okay, getting information from the hippocampus, linking past events. Because how do I know it's a dangerous dog? Well, I don't, only other than my experiences. I may have seen one in the past. I may have been told. So I recognize that response through my experiences. And to illustrate that, many years ago, to cut a long story short, they did an experiment. I believe the pseudonym name was Little Albert. I stand corrected. It's a long time since I wrote a dissertation on this experiment. And Little Albert was 9 months old. It was in the 20s. And they got a white tame rat. And at 11-month-old, they would put it on his lap. And they pre-screened him for phobia and fears. And the only phobia fear he had was loud noise and falling. And what they would do while he was holding the rats, and this wouldn't be ethical these days, the experiment, by the way, you couldn't do it now. They'd get a hammer behind him and go, bang, loud noise. And eventually what would happen, when I put the rat in his lap, he would reject it. And then any furry animal, he would... So there's a memory in his brain now linking that with this. So when you look at the brain, when the amygdala pre-screens for danger, what means anything anyway? So let's say, for example, I grew up in a country where spiders were dangerous. Now, when I first started touring the world, I would go to certain places and see a spider caught in the room. I was like, wow, you stay there. Don't you move. And it was like, well, what's all the fuss? No, you stay there. And I'd seen people see spiders growing up and they'd jump in the air. And I'd be told, you know what, check your shoes for spiders, check the bed for spiders, check the toilet seat for spiders. And you can imagine my response to spiders. Till eventually I'd realise, actually, you know what, I'm okay. They don't present any danger. So it was a conditioned response. And just like everything that we go through, we build associations. So, and I'm going to talk about that more as we go along. It's important to know because the amygdala then activates the hypothalamus to trigger the fear response. So we see the dog, the vicious dog, and we go into fight, flight, freeze mode. So I'm going to either fight it, then I think, well, actually, you know what? I don't stand much of a chance. And I might sprint and think, well, I've got no chance in sprinting. So I might freeze and just hope for the best. Like we just, curl up like a ball here and think he might go away, she might go away, so on and so forth. And that's sort of a brief overview of what's going on. The amygdala deactivates the rational brain. This wonderful brain that we have that no other animal has, the rational brain. So we for simplicity, we say the prefrontal cortex. And I believe there was a guy who wrote a book who mentioned something about emotional hijacking. It might have been Dan Goldman, I stand corrected. And he talked about how under extreme stress, so the easy way out would be say, you know what, here's a book, sort it out, logical brain. This part of the brain's unconscious, we're not in control of. But we can control this part of the brain. So if we could send stuff here, fantastic. But it's not as easy as that. Because I can't just say to someone the spider's okay. I can't say to someone that dog's okay. So a woman I treated years ago on the BBC Radio Manchester, and her goal was to lose or reduce in weight. She wanted to go swimming again. She hadn't swum for 56 years, by the way. And her association to swimming being implicit was the fear response. She had a bad experience 8 years of age. So, yeah, she knew the answers, like we all do. So it's a bit deeper than that. So creating experiences for me is quite useful because by creating an experience, what we can do is stimulate a realization. Okay, so we can stimulate a realization for creating experience, but also we can do, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because we've got some stuff we're going to cover, we can get a map of the person's world. So what I can do, what's quite useful too, and what I've done in the past, I might understand, okay, if the person has a fear or phobia, anxiety, what do they see, hear, and feel? Because 100 people who've got anxiety all have a different experience. They're all anxietying different. So if people going for an interview, they're anxious about the interview, it's all different experience. They all see something different, hear, and feel. So by understanding more about what they see and feel, and having an outcome of where they want to go, it can be quite useful. So, okay, someone might have phobia for flying. They might see in their mind a plane burning, and they might hear the engines on fire or sound, and feel the plane trip. And someone who loves flying might see the beautiful holiday destination. They might hear music on the plane, and peace, and they might feel excited. So one is not right or the other. The brain, being implicit, it's working as the brain should do. So I always normalize an issue. Don't condone the issue, but normalize in the sense that you're not broken. It's just the perfect storm, the cocktail of the brain that has taken it to where the brain is. So it's a perfect storm, so to speak. So, with that in mind, we can do exercises that will give us a better chance not to be emotionally hijacked to be more rational, because the more rational we are, the better decisions we make. So the HPI is about being in control of our states. And you know, if you're going to go in for an operation, God forbid, and the surgeon had an argument with his wife or her husband, you'd want them to be pretty emotionally aware. If you're going to fly a plane, you want the pilot to be pretty emotionally aware, which is quite useful. So we'll do some exercises around that and go from there, because then the glands release chemicals called hormones, and these are active molecules which create emotions and moods. Okay, and the dog, vicious dog, sets up an activation, and I flood the body with cortisol, heart rate goes up, breathing goes fast, and we're on the way. So going forward, what we could do, one of the things I do with my anxiety patients is, well, the first thing I do with my anxiety patients is I get them to turn anxiety into a verb, a doing word, rather than a noun. Okay? You are not a noun, you're not redundant, not a person, place, thing. If you're a noun, you're toast. You're a verb, you're always changing. So I ask them, how are you anxieting? And it goes back to what I said earlier about the map of anxiety. See, hear, or feel. And if you're a verb, an action word, then you can change it. If you're a noun, I'm an anxious person, you're labeling yourself, and a self-fulfilling prophecy becomes a belief. So if you say, how are you doing anxiety? How are you anxieting yourself? It gives you an idea of what's in their reality. And before I do any cognitive work, I get them to start breathing properly again. Okay? So what we do, very briefly, and you can have a go at the exercise if you want to, because the first response, when we see the vicious dog, we see that danger, the deadline at work or whatever it is, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in and initiates the fight-flight response. And how do anxiety patients breathe? Here, high. And they breathe so high for so long they forget to breathe naturally, and naturally a bit deeper. So before I do cognitive work, and we can have a minute go if you wish to, is I get the person to breathe deeper again. And when we breathe deeper, it's the parasympathetic nervous system that kicks in, it relaxes the sphincter muscles and slows the breathing down. And it tells the brain everything's okay. It's very rare anyone will have an anxiety attack while they're sleeping, unless they've got some sort of condition like sleep apnea, which I'm not medically qualified to talk about, but generally speaking, because the body knows what to do. And by getting them to do deep breathing, now, I wouldn't practice this if you're driving or if you're having a shower, you swallow water, but if you practice holding your tummy and just breathing deeper, and as you breathe deeper, practice for 10-15 minutes a day. It may feel uncomfortable at first if you've been breathing high for a long time, but like driving a car, first gear, second gear, when you first time drive, stall it. As you practice it, you get better at it. And I've worked with people who've had severe anxiety, and this is one of the things I first teach them. I've had people who've had anxiety who crawl up in a ball sometimes and don't move. And by practicing this every day for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, half an hour a day, they get better. And it becomes automatic, like driving a car. They don't need to think about doing it, they do it. So when you first tied your shoelace up as a whatever age you were, you'd have seen the MRI scan in the brain light up like a Christmas tree. Now, it wouldn't, because you do it unconsciously. So practice breathing deeper is a great start. Okay? And because neurons communicate with one another by chemicals called neurotransmitters, so we can make chemical change in the brain. One of the greatest discoveries, by the way, for me, in my opinion, in neuroscience, and I actually wrote this on a discussion board the other day, a King's College discussion board the other day, where I'm fortunate to learn of some great people. And I said in my opinion, one of the greatest stuff is the malleability of the brain. So the brain can change. We know it can change. We knew it could change before, but we used to think in young people. it could change, but not as much in older people. And now we know in adulthood it can change. Neuroplasticity, what a great discovery. So your child doesn't need to be your future. Fantastic. So they used to think years ago, even some top neuroscientists, that the brain couldn't change. You're carved in stone. Child father to the man, the first 7 years, that's pretty much going to be you. But now we know. The brain's malleable. Point taken, if you're going to learn a language, you best learn it at an early age because the brain's more malleable. So the older you can do this, if you've got, some techniques, exercise, the older you can do if you teach your parent, the better if you practice. But at any age you can get better and raise your default. So the KPI, the people are like 3 out of 10, you can always go higher than what you are. But the younger you practice stuff, the better. And that's my passion to go into schools. And one of my missions is to go into schools and teach young people. Because at that age, if they learn empathy, they learn compassion, they learn motivation, they learn confidence, they learn self-love. And I worked in care homes for many years, and I've seen the effects of young people, not just young people in care home, young people outside care home too, in mainstream, but I've seen the effects of young people who don't get that support in life early on. And I believe, and this is just my opinion, that if you taught people love, compassion, empathy young in life, you wouldn't have these damn wars we've got everywhere. We wouldn't have this conflict we've got everywhere, or as much of it anyway, because we know there's enough for everybody. There's no need for people to fight and fuss about things that, and that's just sort of, I know it's an very esoteric view of the world, but even for the young person to feel better about themselves, self-harming, substance misuse, all these people do as a coping strategy to suppress the emotion. Now I'm not implying that this would solve all of those issues, but it would make a difference, I think. I think it would make a difference if we sort of learn to love ourselves. But at any age it's malleable, and memories fade gradually. If you went on a holiday, say, last year, you'd remember it a lot better the day after than what you remember it now. Okay? So memories fade gradually. Time's not a healer. Experience is a healer. Memories are brain states from a bygone time. So we have to resurrect them. They're not as rich as imagined. The memories fade in time because our brain has a finite number of neurons, which over time you get used for other memories. But we can draw. So in plain English, really, so you've got, like, say, a tip of the iceberg. Everything that you've ever experienced is under here. The 90% we don't see. In Ireland, we know all about the iceberg. I was going to see the Titanic Museum the other day, and how fascinating that is. And we know, fascinating in the sense that the stories and that went with it. But I digress. But the 90% of the iceberg is underwater. The 10% is above the water, and that's the conscious brain, unconscious brain. Every experience you've ever had is here. So when you think breathing, you're not telling yourself to breathe. Your heart's beating. Emotions behavior here as well, for the most part. But sometimes we access memory. So I could be afraid of flying, but I know in Dublin at the moment, there's 100 planes going over my head, and I'm not afraid because I'm not in my conscious awareness. If I was afraid of flying, which I'm not, by the way, not at this moment in time, then it's not until I start thinking airport or see a plane, it's in my conscious awareness. So they get relegated here. Every experience you've ever had since the very first day you were born, in here. And we know, and one of the reasons I did the HPI experiment with the staff at work, but we know through experiments, and many years ago, I studied a while ago, I was doing a dissertation on impulse control, and I was reading about the Stanford experiments. And in the 1960s, they did experiments at Stanford on impulse control. And what they did is they said to some young people, you can have, I think it was a marshmallow chocolate biscuit, they said you can have one chocolate biscuit now, or marshmallow, or I'm going to go out of the room, and when I come back, you can have two. So the logical thing is two. What they found is some of the young people will take one. I think they were 5-year-olds. You can read up on it. It's on the internet. I'm sure maybe you know it more than me. I'm only going off what I read, what I sourced to write a dissertation a long while ago. And they found, and I stand corrected, by the way, and anyone who's done the experiment, if you want to email me, give me more information, but I understand that the young people who resisted the one marshmallow and waited for 2 would go on to do better in life. So that's biological. So what I'm trying to say here is that I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, whoever you are, because, and I really think we should practice compassion, because we're all doing the best we can with what we've got, because really there's biological, psychological, and sociological influences in our life. So biology being a number of things that we can't control, that we're born with, and dispositions we have. So choose the right parents from a biological perspective, because we're going to have, and people are going to argue that. Some people say some things are genetic, some aren't genetic. My suspicion is if gene can influence physiology, that we can see, eye colour, hair colour, it's going to influence some parts of the brain. That's my suspicion. Okay, but maybe one day I'll be proven wrong or right. And psychologically, the experiences that we've had throughout life shape our reality. So if you got bitten by that dog as a 5-year-old, you're going to believe that dog could be dangerous. Sociologically, if you were born in the most loving family in the world, that loved you, nurtured you, cared for you, but then at 2 years of age, you were stolen by the local drug dealer who was a gangster and violent, the person you are today will be different to the person you probably would have been. Now I'm going to get people saying, or emailing me saying, I had a bad child and I turned out, well, you probably did, but the stats show that the more love you received and the more nurturing the environment was, because what does baby need? Food, water, shelter, also needs hug and love, but better chance you've got. That goes without saying. But the beauty is that even if you haven't had that, we can change. So one thing to bear in mind is we've got schemas, which I touched on before the break. And the schema is just, in plain English, the time we've got is an association. So fire, hot. I know if I put my hand in fire, I don't like it, I'm putting it back there again. Okay? And schemas generally run deep. They're early experiences, for the most part. So the first K is the deepest. And what I mean by that is, okay, the younger you are, the more impressionable you're going to be to a schematic response, because as you get older, you've got a more rational, well, your brain's not fully developed till 22 years of age, for the most part. And that's why teenagers are more impulsive. Because teenagers, for the most part, some adults are probably more impulsive than teenagers, but for the most part, teenagers are impulsive. So they're the sort of teenagers that would have no inhibitions, because in their mind, the brain, prefrontal brain, is not as developed. So they feel what you feel, a teenager. They feel what I feel. They just can't process it well, or as well. And that's why I think we sort of got to cut teenagers a bit of slack, really. They get so much bad stick in the press, at least some of the press I've seen. I'm not sort of condoning their behaviour, but they need more support. I go to schools and they're crying for help. They really are. We pressure them with exams. You put 17 years of age, you've got to decide what you want to do for the next 100 years of your life. You know, for goodness me, it's a big call. I don't know what I'll do the rest of my life alone. 17-year-old. So let's cut a bit of slack and give them some techniques to just decompress. I think anyway. But going back to the point, these schemas are triggers, and they can influence our life in more ways than one. So I've used this sort of analogy before. If this type of dog, if you have 3 people in this room decide we're going to go for a walk in a nice park in Dublin at lunchtime, and one of the guys had a dog as a 5-year-old, and it was a loving dog, a wonderful dog, stroke the dog, lovely, fabulous. If he sees the dog, or she sees the dog 20 years later, not the same dog, the same type of dog, they're going to perhaps be loving towards the dog. If the other person walking the park got eaten by the dog, or it ripped half the leg off, and the dog had attacked that person, ripping away, then their experience is going to be different. If the person didn't have a dog like that, didn't know anything about it, their experience is different. So who's right, who's wrong? Well, whoever believes to be right, that's the reality. So you've got fact, opinion. If I measure this room, and it's 10 meters, then that's as fact as it can be. If I say it's a long way, that's an opinion. Because it could be long if someone's got a condition medically. It could be long if it's a bridge on a 10,000 meter cliff or whatever. It could be long so if you're running away from a tiger. You've got to get to the other side. So it's all relative. But we know a fact opinion. The drawback is that we don't necessarily examine our thoughts. Okay? We kind of take as a given that the dog's dangerous. Or we label, we personalize, we blame. So we use all these labels, we emotionally reason. I know he hates me. I know she hates me. I know I can feel it. Well, how do you know? I can feel it. I blame you. I blame you. And we personalize and we go from there. So for me, one thing to think about is we can dig the garden up, so to speak, and get to the bottom of these underlying schemas where necessary. And I can do, yeah. Cool. So yeah, that's okay. So yeah, so we can get to the some of the underlying schemas where necessary. Okay, so we'll do an exercise shortly. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to clap, and every time I clap, I have to write down the first thing that comes into your mind. So if you haven't got a pen and paper, I'll give you a pen and paper. It's just an exercise. Okay. Have you got a pen? No? Okay, cool. Okay. Have you got a pen? Oh, cool. Okay. So okay, let's sort of play ball. So every minute, every so often, I'm going to clap and write the first thought that comes into your mind. Okay, and we'll go from there. So the first thought that comes into your mind. Ready? Okay, so for the most part, when we say our thoughts, there's an estimation that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. That's what they estimate. I've not counted them yet in saying that it's a rough estimate. And the thing is that the thoughts we've had yesterday, we generally have today and we'll have tomorrow, unless we consciously change it. That's not a problem, by the way. I'm not implying that's an issue. What I am saying is that if you've got outcomes that you want in your life, if you carry the baggage of yesterday to today and you bring it into tomorrow, then you're recycling the same thought process. So at some point we want to be able to assess what we want out of life and decide if what we're thinking is taking us there. Because the more you think something, the stronger it gets. We talked about earlier about what you practice grows stronger. You practice fear, resentment, anger, aggression, which are all normal, by the way. Nothing wrong with having that in small dosages, because people who do that do good things too. Yet in saying that, we're going to do better things if we can get into a better state. And we talked about that being in a better state earlier, a state of love, compassion, gratitude. Because I know if I go to work and I feel grateful for my customers, I'm going to behave differently than if I feel angry. And if I have an argument at home, or you have an argument with somebody else and you go to work, you feel frustrated, or the cat's died or whatever, and you go into work and you're carrying that sort of in your mind, you're not going to work as good as you would be if you could go into gratitude. So I mentioned about the HPI earlier, about training staff to be more empowered to make better decisions and to feel better. And that's what we're going to focus on shortly. Working on the thought process. Okay? Because a lot of the thoughts that we've had are re-offenders. We've got to decide, and we're going to carry this through. Now, it's not always as easy as that, because we talked about earlier the implicit function of the brain. So the thalamus getting all the information from all the senses and then sending it to the amygdala, and that's an automatic response. So we've got a tennis match. So imagine a tennis match, a backhand, a forehand between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. There's a tennis match going on. Should I, shouldn't I? So if you went home this evening, you had a big bang in the kitchen, and you're in bed sleeping, the first 40s jump, heart rate goes up. Should I go check? Well, I'll go check. And as you go downstairs and check, the frontal part of the brain's saying, well, left the dishes on the edge. It's okay. Then the limbic system's, well, actually, you know what? I feel someone could have broken in, and you're walking down, sort of a tennis match going on. I think I left the door open. So it's not easy. Does that make sense? So sort of tennis match. Okay. So what we can do is we have to make a conscious effort to create experiences. And I talked earlier about the time not being a healer. We don't have the capacity to store finite memories richly. You went on a holiday last year. A day after you went away, you remember better than now. So it's about us taking some responsibility on some level to alter our reality in some way. So we're going to do some stuff. And one way that we can make a new pathway in the brain, if you want to start retracting the brain and pathways, like highways in the brain, is perspective. Change perspective, change your world. Okay? So we'll do an exercise, and I'm going to take you from exercises before we sort of break and go from there. So the first exercise I want you to do, you take a challenging exercise and write down 5 ways that you can see it differently. Okay, so challenging exercise, 5 ways you can see it differently. Now, I'm not saying to be Pollyanna, fantastic, my world's falling apart, well, hooray, you know, but it may be just neutralize it. Okay, a few ways we can see it differently. And this links into the next exercise we're going to do. You may not be where you want to be, but you may be where you need to be. And you know, in the past you've had challenges, and if you look back and think, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am now. And that's undermining or patronizing people. It's just being factual. Life's not fair. Life can be fragile. And good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people. However they define good or bad. But this will restructure the brain. Change your perspective, change your world. And we know that negative emotions, or so-called negative emotions, anger, if you want to call them emotions, for simply to call emotions, can breed good things too. So you take a Mother Teresa who was, you know, walking through the streets of India, and she felt a sadness that people didn't get medical treatment. She was sparked to do what she did. You take a Martin Luther King, the anger fueled his political campaign. You take a Rosa Parks. So there are people throughout history that the fuel that burned the fire was an emotion that may not have been perceived as a positive one. They just didn't stay there. So the fuel that burns the fire can be frustration. What motivated me to go into schools and do talks across the globe is my experience in school. The challenges that I had in school. And I decided that if I ever get to the top of my profession, and I did in sport, I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to go to schools, I'm going to educate young people that you don't have to be anything less than what you can be. You can do what you want to do in life if you really focus. Because I was an academic in school, but I've gone into academia after school. I've been studying since 23, as they call me, a true student. I've not stopped studying since, many, many things. And you can do it if you want to do it. I've written books and all sorts that I probably had no right to do of school. So, and my frustration of the system and the way it was my burning fuel. So you got the fuel that burns the fire. But these days, and I'm not for or against medicine, I'm not medically qualified, it's all too easy. If you suppress the bad emotion, so-called, you also suppress the good emotion. So I'd like to see a day where the medical people at least take into consideration not just the biological effects, but the psychological effects of how we can help people. Now, I'm not a medical person, I won't cross over into their domain, but what I would suggest that, and I get people coming to these seminars who are medical people, not medically qualified, is I say to them, look at the psychological aspects and sociological as well as the biological. Because you could just throw a tablet at people, and people may need that from various point of views. I'm not against that, but what I'm saying, why not give them some stuff to do as well? Psychological stuff. let's all work together here. Let's not be divided and all work together. Because I know scientifically, through my studies, that doing this can build a pathway in the brain, potentially. I know that. And I know that if you change your perspective, you change your world. Okay, so I'm going to do an exercise with you now. A couple of exercises before we sort of break and go from there. So we think back to childhood now, going back to those childhood days. And this is sort of an integrated approach. I'm going to keep it experiential, because by keeping it experiential and sort of dipping in our theory, we learn more. So think back to your childhood days, step one, with your family. And write down some emotions that were encouraged to be expressed. You can't think of any specific emotions, any labels for them, just whatever comes to mind in that moment. Okay? The emotions that you were encouraged to be expressed. Now consider the opposite, the emotions which were very much discouraged or forbidden. How many years ago I was at school, a long time ago now, I was about 10-year-old, and I was really big into sport, and as a 10-year-old we had this famous cricket player coming to visit the school. And you know those lines, you stand in lines, they put you in lines, I don't know if you guys in where you guys had where you got to stand in line, and I couldn't contain myself, and I'm like, I wanted to see this guy, and the teacher says to me, I was really excited. For the first time I was excited in school. Contain your excitement! Get back in the line! And it's funny how these sort of things sort of affect you in years gone by. It's not affecting me, I've not had to get therapy for it, but it certainly played on my mind, for sure. So how these things impact us, it's amazing. Now, don't be excited. You're a 10-year-old. You've got an amazing sports star. Don't get excited. Stand in line. Be really hush-hush. Okay. And think of what emotions your mother showed. And father showed. And what impact they had on you. And also you can have the slides too, by the way. If you, I'll send you the slides. If you didn't get my pre-reading, I'll send you the slides as well. Or you can have the if you didn't get my pre-reading, I'll send it out to you. So I wouldn't worry too much about writing the steps down. You can have them. And think of the impact they've had on you. And I know recently I was working with someone who was very successful in business, and he had a family, children, really great guy. He got a promotion about 3 years ago. We working with him. And he was really struggling with his promotion as director of the company. And someone had told him before I worked with him he had imposter syndrome. Whatever that means, I don't know. I don't like labelling people. And he said that he feels like he shouldn't be where he is. And we delved deeper, and I said, okay, what was your relationship with your parents? And he said, well, it was okay, but he said he felt he wanted his mother to be different. More loving, more caring, more... Okay, I said, fair enough. I suppose that's anybody would want that to a certain point. And I said, describe how you would have wanted your mother to be. You get more affectionate, more tactile, more loving, more compassionate. I can't speak for what it was like. I wasn't there, and I'm not there to judge. But what I would say, how was she? Because she was the opposite of what I've told you. I said, wow. I said, well, if she was what you wanted to be, would you have a family now? Would you be a good husband? Would you have the job you've got now? Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe. Perhaps the reason you are the person you are is because that's what you had. It's a hypothesis, and I could be wrong, but I could be right too. But also, equally, you are where you are now. That's gone. So it could have been a good thing. So we can normalize it and look at things in a different way. Not Pollyanna, great. You know, and I think for me, most children crave the love of one parent more than the other. But you know, if you're a parent, you love all children the same, but you love them in different ways. So I'm not saying the child loves the parent more than the other parent, but they may crave one a bit more than the other. And it's through that, trying to prove themselves to that parent, that they get striving qualities. It's never enough. Because there's a current theme I see as a therapist these days. Everyone seems to think they're not good enough. Everybody I come across says, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel good enough. Well, good enough for who exactly? Good enough for what? Who is good enough? And I think a lot of it's down to our psychology. But we know in a normal, in a biochemically functioning mum, all things being well, she has the baby, she produces oxytocin, and the baby connects and bonds as a spectrum. But we know that the baby needs soothing. Love, affection. Without love, affection, the baby probably won't develop as well as it would do. It's a hypothesis scientifically. It may not be true in all cases. So soothe ourselves. Don't be too hard on yourself. Give yourself the odd hug every now and again, the pat on the back. And compassionate for yourself. Because we know that if you don't have self-compassion, if you eat one mint and you beat yourself up and say, you fool, you've eaten the mint, why'd you eat it for? You'll just end up eating the whole packet. Eating one, not the end of the world. I'm not going to gain 3 stone by eating one, it's fine. And I think by doing that, we can have a more balanced view of life. I think we'll do better. So self-compassion is key for me. But think about the impact of what we've discussed have had on your life. You know, good emotion, bad emotion, throughout your life. And it's quite a useful exercise to do, because on the flip side, if this works, part 2, you can identify a childhood memory which affected you in a negative way and still affects you sometimes now. So the guy I mentioned, imposter syndrome, he got it from very young in life and it was affecting him. Director of company, got promoted, I'm not worth it. And it came down to his mum, it was never enough. He gets 90%, why didn't you get 95? He gets a sports award, but you didn't get gold. But you didn't do this, and it was never enough, and all of a sudden, it's like, he said he felt like a fake. I said, wow, but you're doing a good job, logically. You're doing good, man. You know? And the same, a girl I was working with years ago, I was doing CBT training for care homes. One of my remits to do that as well. She was a very bright academic person, had many qualifications, and in her first session, we got the evaluations, 20 evaluations, 19 came back good. One come back negative, and she was stewing over it for a whole week. And come back next week, she goes, oh, I can't present with you now. So why? Because I'm not good. According to who? 1 of 19, of 20. And she's then personalizing it and blaming it. Emotional reasoning, saying, I feel I'll never be good enough. I don't know enough. She says, I look at you and you make it look easy, but I've been doing for many, many years what she's been doing. I said, well, why are you comparing yourself to me who's been doing it for a million years? And I said, well, you know, we did a behavioral experiment. I said, go to a new speaking group and see how new speakers feel. Any new speaker is going to feel a bit apprehensive, and you got better evaluations than me. But that wasn't working because it was very logical. So I regressed the young girl, and there's a schema. As a 12-year-old, she got told off for not doing her homework. Get to the front of the, tell her why you're not doing your homework, and it lived with her. Effectively, in that way. Crazy to think that, you know, these things affect us. And to think the other side, to think of 2 emotions you use well in your life. So on the flip side, the frustration I had as a young person who was struggling immensely in my family home. My mum was very ill and my dad got a big injury at work, and I had to start working at 14 to help support the family, which meant a lot of pressure as well as going to school. We didn't have lunch at school, we were broke, we were facing eviction, had nothing, and not one teacher would say, you okay? Here comes my sub-story, the violin's coming out now, but not even one would say, you okay, Jim? No, nothing. Just send home, letters home, saying he doesn't want to come to school. And I'd go to work, factory, weekend, and work, go to school tired and run down, and grades suffered, and you know, So the story goes, and I thought, well, you know what? That motivated me to want to go to school and say, look, not every young person, I fell in the wrong crowd in the end, but I broke out of it and got out of it because sport was my saving grace. I know you can help them, and you can put a stick out there. If they're drowning, they may want to take the stick. They might not want to take it, but a lot do want to take it. I wanted to take it. I wanted help. I had to help myself. I had to source my own people somehow. And that's why I went back into schools these days, because I think, you know what, there's some good people out there. They just need a bit of a hand every now and again. So what I'm saying is you identify emotions that you can use success in your life now. So you are where you are. You've all done good. You all know where you are. So it's not all being... We don't want to magnify, like the young girl was doing in the training, magnify the negative. I call it magnify the positive. The mental filter. Okay? But it's not as easy as that again, because we've got what we call confirmation bias. Okay? And what confirmation bias means in plain English, we look to reinforce the beliefs we've already got. In plain English, okay? So I'll see what I want to see. What works for me, my model of the world. Or it creates cognitive dissonance. So, okay, I worked with a woman years ago who was a model, and she went into the field to prove a point to herself and others about her being attractive in the eyes of corporation. And 100 people say to her, you look really well. You look fabulous. Your hair's looking good. You look good. It goes in one ear out the other. One person says, I don't like the colour of your shoes. This is true, by the way. And she'd ruminate for like a week and stew over it, because it would reinforce the belief she has. And that's the sort of thing we do. We magnify the negative and the mental filter. So the mental filter for the girl doing the training with me is the one negative, not the 19 positive, not the effect she's going to have on people. It's just that one, We've got to train ourselves, for me, to magnify the positive, to what we see through the binocular. And if we sort of look at the final part of the exercise, and you can go through it again as often as you want to, is how can you apply the first experience? If you go cast your mind back to the beginning, the ones that you were, the impact it's had on you, any negative impact that the emotions are having on you now, how can you do what you did with the other emotions and turn it into a positive? Heal others, heal yourself is one way. Truth be told, it was a way of healing myself too, helping young people. Why are you leaving a full-time job where you're well paid in football to work in care home? Well, I want to make a difference in life from the point of view that's tangible, helping people live more adaptive lives. And why did you decide then to sort of embark on this sort of, I wouldn't say a crusade, but this decision to get this stuff out there? Because I realised, you know what, if I can help other people, it's a way of helping myself too. So from the point of view of the coach, you don't have all the answers. The biggest burnout for any coach and therapist is they think they've got all the answers. They don't. And I think for me, the brain's got trillions of cells. You can only facilitate. Because I know if someone's drowning, if I can't swim and I dive in, I'll drown too. But I give them a stick and say, here you go. They might say no. You can put that stick, and that's their choice then. I can't influence that. But I can't dive in, and someone else can't dive in too, because I'll drown too. So here's the stick. Your call. And think how you can turn the negative emotion into a positive, and maybe help someone who's going through what you're going through. Maybe not now, but maybe in a year, 10 years, who knows? It'll all make sense. I've lost jobs in the past. I've broken up in relationships in the past. I've failed in business in the past. And it hasn't been till a few years later I thought, great, fabulous. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm not wishing bad on anybody, and I've had my fair share too, and I wanted to come back, but truth be told, sometimes it defines you as a person. Okay? So I talked about HBR before, and states being key. You can be the victim, and you can be the empowered state. Okay, we can all be a victim. We've all got enough story. We've all got enough everyone's got a story to tell. We can stay it if we want to, but the drawback is life is short. at least in this genetic form. And it's fragile, and there's no guarantees for anybody. You could be a billionaire and fit and healthy and have everything you ever wish for, go like that. Equally the other side of it. It can change like that. But the reality is you're going to go through 6.5 to 1. It's just going to be, we all experience pretty much the same. It's the ones who bounce are the ones who generally have a more adaptive life. Okay? And the one who's got the widest assortment of states to respond with are the one who will be more effective. The axiom applies to clinicians, patients, parents, children, business managers, employers. Okay? The one who can dip in and out of different states will dominate any situation. Successful people. They can access a variety of states. Okay, so I'm going to do some exercises now to really get a feel for what you can do on a daily basis. Because I can waffle on, but let's really dip into it and let's go for it. So, okay, let's start with an emotion that you like to feel. It might be love, gratitude. People look for love outside themselves. They look for gratitude outside themselves. I once worked with someone who said that, and when I did the exercise, I can't feel love inside. It's got to come from outside. I said, wow, it's a big call. Because ultimately you're in the hands of other people. What if it's not coming to you? What are you going to do then? So you're in a relationship, and you're not in control of the relationship. The other person can make their own decision. And we know people in relationship, they're lonely than people on their own. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but that's the reality. It's the one who can find inside. Okay, and you attract it. So you can identify emotion you want to feel. If I go into work grateful every day, enthusiastic, focused, no matter what's going on in my world outside me, I know I'm going to be more functional in the work or in life in general. I'm going to have a better time. Okay, I can come to Dublin, and in the time I've got when I'm not doing presentations and work, I can enjoy it. It's a beautiful place, beautiful country. I can go see the countryside. I can go out. I can enjoy myself. I could just lock myself away and do nothing. The choice is one's choice. So love, gratitude, and think of a time you've experienced it. And some people I work with, they can't even think of a time they've experienced it. It's been that long, but they've actually felt it. Okay, and if you can't think of a time you experienced it, think of the closest time or what it means to you. And now the next part is, if you're comfortable doing so, you can. You don't have to be not comfortable closing your eyes. But if you close your eyes, you block out the outside world. And you don't have to, you don't want to, but if you do, really feel it. Feel love, feel gratitude, and notice the feelings, the sounds, the smells, the tastes. Really feel it. Really, what you're doing by doing this exercise is wonderful. Scientifically, it's wonderful. You're creating a pathway in the brain that exists. You're reinforcing a pathway that exists, or you're creating a new one that's not there. Okay? The chances are you make it one stronger. It's like a road network. Like when you first learn to drive, first gear, second gear, stalled automatically. Some people do anger, resentment automatically. Angry people find something always to be angry about. Grateful people find something always to be grateful for. You raise the default. And if you're a parent, what a wonderful thing to give to your children. You're a teacher. And it's free. It's not going to do them no harm. Because if you start a 5-year-old, like when you start learning language, let's say 2 or 3, or you learn a new language, you're more malleable, by 20-year-old, if your default state of gratitude is like 9 out of 10, imagine what a great life you'll have. If your default state is 2 out of 10, you can improve, but you're always playing catch-up. So certainly if you're a parent, a teacher, give young people, say, here you go. It's cheaper than an iPhone, and cheaper than going to McDonald's and other things that we do for dopamine in our brain. It's just 5-minute exercise. What can they say? Well, I don't want to do it. Not for me. Fine, don't do it then. But if they do it, young, it gets stronger, and it won't do them any harm. It doesn't go on in school. No teacher that I've come across as a student, you know what? Feel love, feel gratitude, feel compassion. But then there's no maths equation for that. And they teach them a lot of stuff that's useful, but okay, you can be the most brightest person in the world, you can't control your emotions, no good to nobody. But the fastest car in the world, you can't drive it. What point is it having it? have the best guitar in the world, we can't play it. And that's the brain's the same. So really feel it for 30 seconds or so. Not a ballpark, this is the ballpark figure, there's no rationality in 30 seconds. You've got any negative thoughts, just let them disintegrate. But really feel love, really feel gratitude. And how often should you practice this? Well, how often you want to practice it? How often do you practice kicking a ball, playing an instrument? For me, it's like even the best musicians practice their scales. Because if you don't practice your scales, then you haven't got the foundation. So I practice this as often as I can. Because like everybody else, there's times I wake up in the morning and think, oh no. And you're human, we're all that way. You wake up, you've got a sore back, a sore knee, or you've just heard the news and you think, goodness me, what's going on in the world? And the more you practice, the better it is. I'm not Pollyanna. I don't want to, propose to you to the world's a wonderful place, because there's some horrible stuff and horrible people in the world. We focus on them, we miss out on the beautiful things too. There's a time and place for everything. Okay, don't let negative thoughts dominate your thought process. Raise the rents so they move out. Put the rent up. Put the rent up so they can't afford to stay in your head. Go away, negative thoughts. Quieten down the limbic system. Calm down. It's okay. So we talked about the CBT model before, and these schemas and how they affect us. And it's not the situation; it's our thought about the situation. Because one situation can affect people in different ways. So the ABC model is the activating event is the A, the B is the beliefs about the event, and the C is the consequence: behavior, emotion, physiology. Okay, so if you take a situation in your life, take a moment to think about your thoughts about the situation. So we could all be facing redundancy, and we've all got different thoughts about being made redundant. Point taken, one person might have £1 million in bank, and one might not, but all things being equal, we could all see it differently. You could see it as a new opportunity, one could see it neutral, one could see it as like, oh no, I'll never get a job again. You break up a relationship, situation, one person might think, I'm never going to meet anyone again. One person might think, well, okay, great, thank goodness they're gone. Feel excited, behave, go out and party. And one person might be in between. They don't want to be there, then so be it. It's for the best. Maybe it's better. And they might roll in university, they might, do whatever. So for me, the ABC model is quite useful because it breaks the problem down to manageable levels, and you can chunk it down, and also you can apply interventions at different levels. We talked earlier about the breathing strategy, physical strategy, walking, exercise, behavioral strategies, we've covered some so far, emotional strategies, and we can look at restructuring the thought process. We can look at restructuring our thoughts, which we'll talk about later on today, and our thoughts being more often not under the iceberg, unconscious. Okay, they're automatic. They just pop up, and they generally pop up for various reasons. And one being we talked earlier about the Pavlovian nature of human beings. So I mentioned about the little Albert experiment, where they wouldn't be ethical these days, the experiment in the 1920s, so they give the young Albert, 11-month-old with no known phobias, a white rat to hold, tame one, and they bang a hammer behind him, and then he begins to become phobic about the white rat, or any fluffy toy for that matter. So he builds an association. The dog, Pavlov's dog, so they ring the bell, dog salivates, they move the food away, ring the bell, dog salivates. So I might see a colour and it sparks something off. I might see a face. When I worked in care homes years ago in education, this young girl who I was working with, one time we had another member of staff come in, and he come in and just clapped his hand, rubs his hands together and said, make us a brew, and she got up and attacked him. And the reason being, when I read the plan, was that her uncle, who was an abuser, would do that. Implicit response. So we don't always control. So for me, what I do when I do coaching therapy, I do in vivo, do role play to sort of bring it up to here and figure it out. So the woman I'm working with a year ago would come on course. She goes, I come home at night at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I feel all nervous. I can't go out of the house. Well, I can go to work, but I get home at 6 o'clock. And I regressed her to a time in her life where she felt that feeling, the earliest memory, and she goes back to a time when she was attacked by a dog as a 12-year-old, and the dog was the same bark as the one that was barking when she got home. So the brain's pretty complex in that way. Okay, so sometimes it's worth sort of sitting back and thinking, okay, what is it? What's going on? And we don't want to believe in that we think. In that sense. So the dog's dangerous, it's not dangerous, it's neutral, it's all subjective to a reality. There's fact, there's opinion. Okay? Is it a long way to the end of the room? Depending on how you perceive a long way. If I put a board in a 10,000 story building, it might seem a long way. If you've got a condition medically, it might seem like a long way. If you're running away from a vicious dog, it might seem like a long way, but it might not be. Is it 10 meters? Well, it would be if I measured it. So we can ask questions that are quite useful for these thoughts to get a more balanced view. So if you take a thought that's going through your mind and we elicit what we call a cognitive distortion, if we want to call it a distortion, whatever that might be, and just take a breath and think, is it fact or opinion? And these aren't exhaustive questions, by the way, and I've got more that you can use that I've got time to cover now. Is it fact or opinion? So losing the job, will I really live by a van by the river? If I break up in that relationship and it's finished, will I really not meet anyone again? Is it really the end of the world? Is it fact or opinion? What would someone else say? So externalize it. What would someone else say about the situation? The bigger picture. Because we get caught up in it. Okay, we're good at giving advice, but we're not always good at taking our own advice. Okay, what's the bigger picture? What would someone else say? So we know in hypnosis that one of the components of hypnosis is dissociation and association. If you associate to an unresourceful state, you're going to be in an unresourceful situation. We can externalize that. And we can associate to a resourceful state. So if you've got bad food in the fridge, it contaminates all the other food. Just get it out. So dissociate from that state. Externalize it. Push it away. Give it a colour. Push it away. Drain the colour. And get it away. Because we represent for our senses. So if you can imagine whatever that is from a sensory point of view, push it away. Size of the postage stamp. Drain the sound. The colour. Turn the sounds down. And think about things that you do well. And isn't it delightful to know that you've had challenges in the past and overcome them? You'll overcome challenges in the future. The bigger picture is another way of seeing it. It could be a blessing. Okay? What advice would they give someone else? Externalizing it. Takes the pressure off. Is my reaction proportional to the actual event? Is it really as important as it seems? The road is long in life, you know. Things don't always go to plan. There's more than one road to get to the destination. The quickest way from A to B is a straight line, but sometimes you've got to divert. Okay? You get a traffic jam, you can sit there, or you can go the other way. Okay? You think of a different way. Just the other day, you know those railway crossings? It was about, say, 8 in the morning. I had to be somewhere at, say, 10. And I was there for about 10 minutes. And the guy came up and says, the railway crossing's not gone back up since 7 o'clock. And people are waiting there. I'm thinking, wow. If it's not gone up since 7 o'clock and it's now 8:15 and I've been 15 minutes, it probably won't go up. So I decided in my infinite wisdom to go a different way. I turn around and people are waiting there. I'm thinking, well, you know, all things being well, I only got to get to the other side 10 minutes. And if I go around the other way, it's going to take me 20 minutes, but I'm going to have a go. So that's life in general, metaphorically. I might want to go there, and going there, all things being well, it's a journey. The key is to sort of, re-navigate. And these are quite useful sort of questions to ask yourself, you know. I have a couple of things we're going to cover before we sort of break, is the gratitude journal. So practice gratitude on a daily basis. Feel gratefulness. I know it might be hard sometimes when we're going through stuff. That's all the more for doing it. I had one person one time in a business say to me, what a load of rubbish this gratitude journal is. That's what he said. I said, okay. I said, do one thing for me then. And I said to him, close your eyes. And if you close your eyes for 2 seconds, okay, and then you open your eyes, And I said, okay, there's someone somewhere in the world that would give anything what you've got now. What about your senses? You can damn see. Some people not to undermine them because they've got great life. They do the best they can with what they've got. But not everyone's got that. You can walk, you can talk, you've got a job. I said, you can't find something to be grateful for. Goodness me. There's someone somewhere in the world working for £1 a day. I'm not undermining to compare to other people, but surely, you know, there's stuff that we can be grateful for. And by doing it, you start realizing, you know what? I've got a lot going for me. More than I realize. And, you know, your children, money, holidays, you've been, car, phone, so much, even material stuff, or just family. You can't buy things as well like that. We take for granted. We don't realize. The gratitude list is great. Every morning I do a gratitude list when my brain's most receptive. You get up in the morning, your brain's at a state where it's very receptive. It's a state when we do hypnosis, our goal is to get someone to that sort of state with focused intention, because you know that's a good state to be in for behavioral change. They're not in beta, they're in alpha. And the great thing about being in alpha, we're in a creative state. Like when you do dissertation and it just flows, when you drive it flows, when you do sport and it flows. It's a great place to be. And by doing the gratitude list in the morning, it's a seed into the mind, the gateway. And in the evening too. If you watch a scary film in the evening, you probably have horrible dreams. So it's a good time to do gratitude list and program yourself emotionally to raise the default. Okay, it's not to say that you're going to be grateful, you know, when you spill a coffee all over yourself, or you know, the plane's running late. Or of course, you're a human being. You know, we all have moments, but we minimize it. So you might have the delay and think, you know what the heck? I'll just do something else. You know, and it's a great place to be. Set your intention, and we can prove this through neuroscience now. What you practice grows stronger. How can we prove it with neuroscience now? Pretty simple, MRI scanning. The brain. We know in mindfulness and meditation, there are parts of the brain that are activated and get stronger the more you practice it. So you practice being miserable, frustrated, angry, resentful, you're going to get damn good at it. You practice being grateful, loving, empathic, you'll get better at it. It's as simple as that. That we know, until eventually you get that good at it, and it's common nature. You're one of them sort of people that you see at work, you think, why is that person always goddamn upbeat, no matter what? And you think, is their life great? And then you investigate and think, okay, they've got more challenges than me, but they always seem to be upbeat. Their world's falling apart, they're always upbeat. It's because they've practiced it so often, I think anyway, and they're great people to be around. And be the sort of person that you want to be around is a good place to start. Okay, I'm a big believer in goals. I think goal-directed behavior is great. Goal-directed behavior is fantastic because when you've got a goal, it's the journey, and also it's like the orchestra. The conductor, the brain, you can conduct all the senses of the brain to go in a specific way. So goal behavior is great. Yet in saying that, we mustn't wish our life away, because whatever your goal you've got it because you think it's going to make you feel better. So don't put conditions on happiness. You don't have to have a conditional happiness. You can feel happy for no reason. So anything that you want, car, watch, holiday, money, you want it because you think it's going to make you feel better. Feel better now, is what I say. So whatever goal you've got, write the feeling it's going to give you. You write down the feeling it's going to give you, the goal that you've got, and feel it and hold on to it. I know the law of attraction people will say it's a good way of attracting it, and maybe it is. Who knows? But ultimately, in the end, even away from the law of attraction, because I believe in the law of action too, nothing's going to fall on your lap. No one's going to drop a bag of money on your head when you meditate. But I also think, you know what the heck, you know? If you're going to be around, you go to the party. It's like I was talking to this bloke the other day. He's going, well, life is this, life is that. So I agree to a point. But if I go to a party, I've got two choices, or several choices. One choice being I can be miserable, or I can have a good go and just do what I can while I'm there. Life is the same. Plenty to be miserable about if you want to, but there's plenty to be happy about too. And for me, the goal is key. And I think by doing that, you're going to have a better chance in life. You'll have a better chance. So you can practice doing the exercise. And another good one to raise your default is whatever you want in life. So the KPIs, I say to them, you know what would it feel like when you got the KPIs? What would you feel like when you've achieved the key performance indicators, the goals from a work point of view? I feel great, feel motivated, feel fantastic. Okay, well, feel it now. You've got a better chance of bringing it into your life. A much better chance. Nothing's guaranteed in life, but you've got a better chance. If you pick up that phone or you go to that meeting and you feel enthusiastic, you've got a better chance of influencing the situation. You turn up. If I'm a teacher and I go to work, let's say if I'm a teacher and I'm working with a challenging group of people, if I go into work one day, demotivated, saying, hello everybody, nice to see you all, it's going to be different if I go in and say, okay, let's do it. Now they might react in a bad way. I can't control that, but I can control myself. That's not saying that, okay, it's always easy as that. There's certain days where life isn't easy. I've worked with high-risk offenders. It can be very challenging. I know that. Life can be very challenging. Bringing up children can be very challenging. All these things are challenging, but we can train ourselves. We've got a better chance. Being a leader, being a manager is not easy. Getting results isn't always easy. But what's our best chance? What's our best chance? And why wish our life away? I know plenty of people who say one day they'll be happy when they've got the party, when they've got the holiday, when they've got the job. And they never are. They never experience it. They wish their life away. You know, it's almost like, well, when I do this, it's going to happen. They book a holiday, and the year before they go, they tell everyone on social media they've booked a holiday. Great, I'm gone. And every week they say, I'm nearer to paradise, and I'm going to paradise. And then the day before they go to paradise, it's everywhere. I'm going to paradise. I can't wait to go. And they get to paradise, and within 2 or 3 days, they start moaning. The mosquitoes have bitten me. The food's crap. The people. So for me, it's like when they get back and can't wait to come home. They come home. Well, I hate being home. It's like, well, you know, I'm not against having nice things, but you've got to start somewhere. You know, while you practice, grow stronger. It's a given. And start choosing states that you want to practice. It's key for me. A couple of more things before we break. Relaxation training. Now, how often do we take time to relax in life and just be at peace? Be in the now. And these guys have got it right, you know. Human beings cause these wonderful animals, not all of them, but some human beings cause them more problems than they need, and they're very much in the now. We can be in the now too, as well, and it's quite useful to take the time out. Just take time to not to be anywhere, to not do anything. Not easy all the time, and I'm not being idealistic. I know we don't live 2,000-3,000 years ago. We didn't have the concept of time as we have now, but you know, I have 10 minutes and not to feel guilty about it. I need 10 minutes. I need 20 minutes. I need half an hour. My own music. Go for a walk. Relaxation. Breathing exercise we covered earlier before. Take some time just to look outside and go for a wander, and it's wonderful. And you know, I went to a really nice place yesterday in Dublin. It was lovely by the coast there, and just had half an hour of my own. I thought, isn't it nice? And just look around and watch the water and just losing yourself. It's meditative, and you don't have to just force yourself to sit down and be at one all the time. It's not always easy doing it that way because your mind's always going to think. Just being in an environment, and you've got plenty of out here. You know, imagery is great too, and creating a safe place for yourself. And I'll do an exercise before we break, and go from there. Create a place for yourself. Imagery is fabulous, and imagery is phenomenal. It really helps us to decompress, and the physiological benefits it has is phenomenal. Phenomenal. I was doing some training once. It was mental skills training. It was some people at the Air Force, and sitting in a room this big, and we're teaching some of the people in the Air Force some skills, and I said imagery is great, fantastic to decompress, to brain to be at rest, and the physiological benefits you'll have from doing imagery. Go to your safe place And that could be off the coast or the countryside in Ireland. It could be a holiday you went in, wherever. And I'm teaching him, and one of the guys in the background, he's one of them sort of old school, he goes, well, a lot of bollocks, all this. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not going to argue with you, but what I'll do is I'll do an experiment with you. And I did an experiment with him, and it was quite fascinating. I took a heart rate monitor, and I said, okay, I'm going to take your heart rate and blood pressure. I'm not a medical person, but I've done sports science. I said, I'll take it before we do 10 minutes imagery, and I'll take it after we've done it. I measured his heart rate, it's about like 80, 90 beats per minute before the exercise, and his blood pressure's higher than what it should be. It was like 140 something over 90 something. It's probably because I wound him up. And then 10 minutes of doing this, it drops by 20 beats per minute, his heart rate, his blood pressure goes down to normal range. Now you could argue that, and he said to me, will it stay that long? I said, I know if I take a pain relief tablet, I'm not going to be out of pain forever. It'll wear off, and I'll just take another one, if that's what one wants to do. Not that I imply take pain, but to give you an example. So I said, do it again. And he goes, what's the implication? I said, the implication is 20 beats per minute less strain on your heart, multiplied by a day is 10,000 beats less on your heart strain. Normal blood pressure range. And I said, more importantly for your job, you've got to make a split decision, run up and down the room 10 times, make a decision. When your heart rate's everywhere and your blood pressure's everywhere, and make it when you're more relaxed and calm and focused. And did me a favour. Because him dismissing me made me show the group how powerful it is. Because I know how powerful the mind is. And by doing it, we're in a better place. I'm not saying you need to visualise and relax and all is well in the world, but it's a great place to start. So we'll do a quick 2-minute exercise with you so you can take away and practice. If you want to practice, you can anytime. So what you can do, perhaps you want to close your eyes, you can if you want to, and just really relax. And while you're relaxing, you can place your hands on your tummy for your deeper breathing we talked about. And as you place your hands on your tummy, you breathe deeper. As we breathe deeper, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Relax the sympathetic nervous system, the spinal muscles relax. And just breathe naturally, normally. As you breathe naturally, normally, be aware of your heartbeat, your breathing. Just breathing naturally, normally, and you can hear the projector in the background. That's okay. Any negative thoughts that disintegrate in the atmosphere, don't challenge the thoughts. And just go back to a time in your life you felt really calm, peaceful. Could be a location, a holiday, a vacation, a family gathering. And as you go back, fully engage in those wonderful feelings. And as you engage in those wonderful feelings, if you can't think of a time, just create a time. Colours, sounds, feelings. And let them spread through every cell of the body. As you're doing that, just breathe a little bit deeper. And as you breathe deeper, any negative thoughts in your mind disintegrate in the atmosphere. You can empty your thoughts into a bag and put them outside, pick them up in 2 minutes if you wish. And really feel them. And I'll pause for a moment. Let you enjoy the feelings. Maybe a holiday, family gathering. Just create your safe place. This is your place that you can go to whenever you feel any overwhelm, and take yourself away. It's your own little safe place. And you can anchor it if you want to. And you can flick that switch when you want to. And isn't it delightful to know that you've got all the resources within to overcome any challenge that you have? Because you've done it in the past. And you'll do it in the future. And you can let the mind, subconsciously, any problems you've got, give them to the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind will find the solution for you. And you can just carry on making these wonderful experiences for yourself. In that wonderful relaxed state, think of how that it's going to be a benefit a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now. How much better place the world will be access that more resourceful state. A vacation from the problem. In for a moment. Just like when you are talking to someone on the phone and the doorbell rings and you go back to the phone, you can't remember what you're saying, or when you're talking to someone in a deep conversation, you're in deep trance conversing and the phone rings, you pick up the phone, you go back to that person, you remember what you're saying, and any problems you've got, just distract yourself enough to connect to a different experience and enjoy it. And I'll pause for a moment. Okay, and in your own time, in your own pace, you can come back to the area now. So it's going to break shortly and we'll stream. I'll just take the stream.